Good day, everyone, and welcome to Home at the Hollow. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today's recipe is a simple apple crisp in the slow cooker at that. It's been a really super busy day. Renovations and other things are still happening, and it's just, going to be a very busy day. I shared with you guys there is a local market here that I just adore going to. Well, of course, this past weekend I went, and they get the best local apples. I think local, Virginia, Tennessee, and West Virginia. But I was able to get, and I think I got the last one, Granny Smith apples. And that's one thing I really love about going to his market is they have, big bushels, or this is actually a half bushel to get. So you'll be seeing some things cooked with apples, a couple of things. But today is a very simple apple crisp. And if that's recipe, if that's something that you want to try, if you haven't tried it in a slow cooker, or if you just want to come and hang out with me, then keep on watching. I am starting my apple crisp with my streusel. And the reason I'm doing that is because once I believe you guys can see, once I peel and slice these apples up, even though I do have fresh lemon juice to squeeze over there, I want to get these into my slow cooker as quickly as possible and to get this going. But I have 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour, 3 firmly packed 1/4 cups of brown sugar, dark brown sugar, whatever you have, but that's 3/4 of a cup flour, 3/4 of a cup of dark brown sugar. I have a 1/2 cup of chilled cubed butter, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. But what I'm going to do is just really, as quickly as I can, get this, kind of lightly mixed up. Now, if you don't have a pastry blender, don't worry about that, because my mom, as some of you guys probably already know, was not a great cook. She did not have, even a pastry blender. And what she would use is two forks. And if that's what you got, that's okay too. Because, a recipe like this is really super hard to go wrong with. But, that looks pretty good. I'm going to add my little spices. It's just a little bit. And I'm going to add my 1/2 cup of chilled cubed butter. And we will just give this a quick go, or as quickly as I can anyway. I have guests coming over for dinner tonight. And this is one of those desserts that is going to, please probably just about everyone. And it's one of those that you can put in your slow cooker. The house is going to smell amazing. And you don't have to do a lot of last minute work, because when I'm having guests over for dinner or lunch or whatever, the last thing I want to do is come in here and work and have them sitting there, what do I do now? Grab a book off the coffee table or something. That's the last thing I want to do. And when I had the inn, I was the same way. I did as much prep work as possible, froze everything that I could possibly freeze. So when I got up the next morning, I didn't have to, scramble doing so much. But there you go. A very happy streusel. And I'm going to get started peeling and slicing these apples up, and we will go from there. So I have the majority of my apples already sliced up, and if you want to do slices, if you want to do chunks, cubes, whatever works for you, as long as they are relatively consistent in size, because you know, you don't want half of your apples to cook into a mush and then the other half to be almost perfect. So I have basically sliced mine into 1/4 of an inch slices, and it is just so easy. I got a half a bushel at the marketplace that I took you guys on a shopping trip to, and these are West Virginia Granny Smith apples. Oh my goodness, I have loved apples ever since I was a very young child, and I begged my parents to plant us an apple tree. And my mom told me, oh, it would take years and years and years to get any apples, but I never got an apple tree. But that's okay. That's all right. I had my time. Whoops. I had my time in Nova Scotia where we had fresh apples, pears, and it was just wonderful. But I've already poured my lemon juice on, and I want to make sure, and that, you know, it just does an apple good. And we will get these started in the slow cooker in just a second. So the first thing that I want to do with my slow cooker, and I've got my magic grease here, because I think it's going to work just fine. I think you guys can see. I'm going to give it just a little bit of a brushing, just a little bit around the sides and of course the bottom. I used this the other day when I made my cornbread, and oh, it worked just perfectly. But you want to grease that a little bit, or if you want to just use butter, that's okay too. And I am going to dump all of these apples. Oh my goodness, yes. I feel so fortunate that I found these the other day. And that's a pretty good, you guys excuse me, that's a pretty good fill on the crock pot, on the slow cooker. And I've got my streusel here. You guys remember that? And I've been, you know, working with it and kind of just mixing it around a little bit, and the aroma is just wonderful. And of course, I think if you guys are concerned about the amount of sugar that's in here, I certainly think that you can reduce it to maybe like a 1/2 cup of brown sugar. But, and just, it's so easy, so easy. And I'm going to just seal my apples up like that. Now what I do, and of course certainly it's up to you, I've got a handful. I did not measure this. I wish I should have, but I did not measure it. I've got a goodly handful of pecans, some fresh toasted whole pecans, and I gave them a rough chop because you know you don't want to be too fine here. And I'm going to just add this over the top. But the one thing I wanted to tell you about pecans, and I brought this plate out to show you. I hope when you're working with any kind of nut, of course you want to go through your nuts and make sure there's no shells or anything. But in particular with pecans, I think you guys can see. I went through, of course I always go through my nuts and make sure, but they have the two little divots here. I'm not really sure that you guys can see, but even though what could get stuck in between these two little divots here won't break your tooth. It will, I think, I'm not really sure if you guys can see, it will become very, it's bitter. It's very bitter. So that, you know, in that respect, you kind of want to, you know, look at your pecan and, you know, maybe have a little bit of a knife, and if there's anything hiding in there, see, there was a couple of things here hiding in there. Like I said, I don't think it will break a tooth, but certainly it's definitely bitter. And there you go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on high for about 2 hours. At the 2-hour mark, you definitely want to check if you have a knife or a fork or something, and reach down and pierce an apple to see, you know, how much give that apple has. And, you know, at that point, make a decision for yourself. How, you know, how firm do you want them? But certainly you want them to have a good, almost like an apple pie type bit of doneness. I certainly don't want it to turn into applesauce. So at 2 hours, check it. And then if it needs to go, you know, another half an hour on high or another hour on high, 3 hours is max. That's the most you want to do in your slow cooker. And of course, it all depends on your slow cooker too. But we will be back and see how this has turned out. And we're back. The slow cooker worked its magic. At 2 hours, I checked. They were still a little more firm than I cared for them to be, so I allowed it to go another hour on high. And here we are, 3 hours on high. Now, the streusel that I placed on there will not, in a slow cooker, will not become crisp like a traditional apple crisp. It's going to lay there and it's going to impart a warm, gooey, praline tasting covering. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like a melted, to me, with the pecans in it, it tastes like a melted praline. Now, if you've never had a praline, well, we'll do that too here on this channel, but oh my goodness, delicious. It's just really delicious. But what I'm going to do, since my guest won't be here for a little while, I've moved, I think you guys can see, I just kind of skewered this off a little bit, the lid off a little bit, and you know, let some of the air out, and turned it to warm. You don't want to, you know, continue to cook and cook and cook it. But certainly this is going to make a fine, fine dessert, maybe with a little bit of ice cream, if you or your guests care to. I think it certainly would be really, really good. But delicious. It's warm, it's cozy, it's comforting, it's inviting. Everyone's gonna love it. Thank you again for joining me here, home at the Hollow. Goodbye, guys.